Hey everybody, Dave here. Hope you're having an awesome day. So this week I want to show you a simple way to use LEDs in your builds. This is an example of one of my builds that I did a while back, and I've got a little switch down here, and you can see the eye just turned on, can turn that off. And to be honest, as a graphic designer by trade, I kind of stink at electronics and I have no clue what I'm doing. So every time I watched a YouTube video on how to use LEDs or how to wire LEDs, it literally ended up in my feeble mind. This is what it sounded like. So attach the flux capacitor to the turbine and then drop it down 6 ohms by using this resistor. And I was just like, I have no clue what they're talking about. So this is a simple way that I use LEDs. So come on, let's do it. Okay, so for this build, we're going to be using tea lights, and I just want to give you this as a caution. I did get these tea lights at the Dollar Tree. I thought this is awesome. 2 tea lights for $1. Can't beat that. But normally the tea lights that I use have a switch that is soldered and then connected to the battery source and so forth. When I pulled this apart, these tea lights are really, really cheap, and it has just this plastic button that actually slides back and forth, and it just slides and pushes the connector to the battery. So those are not going to work for me. Instead, I went to Hobby Lobby. I found these for $3.99. You can wait till they're 40% off and get them a little bit cheaper, but this is more what I'm used to and how I've been working with them. So you can see here, it's got the soldered pieces here. So I think this is going to work for what I need. Yeah, so we'll just flip it on there, and that looks pretty cool. Now, one thing I do want to point out is when you flick this on, you'll notice that this light flickers because it's a quote-unquote candle. Now, that could be cool in some of your builds if you want it to look like it's computing, but I went ahead and went on to Amazon, and I just purchased this 400-piece set with all these different colors, and it was, I think, $8.99. So this will provide you with some nice variety for your build. Okay, so the next thing I did was I'm looking at my bits box, and I want to put an eye on this piece here. So I've got some tank parts, a little washer of some sort, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at this and thinking, how can this help kind of house the LED or hide the main component of the LED and also make my build look a little bit cooler? So again, I'm just kind of laying it out there, looking at these. I found this little Gundam piece. I think that's kind of cool, and I think that'll work for the eye housing. One thing I like to do is just kind of turn the light on, and that's kind of what it's going to look like once it's built. That one's a little transparent, but once it's painted, that would cover up. So yeah, but you could also use this for, if it wasn't an eye, maybe you were trying to do a piece of equipment in your build that was lit up. You could also do this process for that, but in this case, I'm going to use it for this little droid that I'm building. And I think I'm going to go with this little Gundam piece, and I think that's going to make a nice little eye. For the eye, I'm actually just going to poke a little hole, and then I'm going to take my X-Acto knife, and I'm going to just kind of twist it and drill it out. And I'm not going to drill it too big. I want it to be a little bit snug, so the LED kind of almost has a pressure fit in there. I will glue it in at the very end after I paint everything, but I'm not going to glue it in just yet. But I think the pressure fit's nice. Put that on there. This is going to look pretty cool. Okay, so this is kind of how my brain works. I'm thinking, if the battery dies, will I ever be able to replace it? So this little Tic Tac bottle works pretty nice because that lid opens and closes, and I can put the housing in there, and I can open it and close it if I ever need to change that battery. So if the battery does die, I can just pop that open, pull out the battery, put a new battery in, close it up, good to go. Now, for the wiring, you can go buy little pieces of wire places, but chances are you probably have some scrap wire laying around. And this is just an old USB cable. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of getting a rough measurement of from the front to probably a switch in the back. And then I'm going to snip that off. And then I am going to take an X-Acto blade and just carefully do a slice down the middle of this wire. And once I've got that done, I can just peel the plastic back and just give it a little tug, and that should just rip right off. Sometimes there's extra little copper and things. So I'll just pull that off, pull this little foil off, and looky there. I've got myself 4 awesome little wires, and I didn't have to go buy anything. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm paying attention to where the one leg of the LED is soldered, and it looks like it's soldered to the first peg. And then it looks like the switch is soldered onto this peg, which I believe goes through to the battery. Now, I think the second leg of the LED is under this, so what I did was I just bent back those little pegs, and once I got those bent back, that just kind of fell out, and then I was able to remove that, and yeah, it looks like second leg isn't even soldered to anything. So I started out using this kind of cheapy soldering iron, but the more you do this, and if you see you're using a tool quite a bit, I think it's okay to invest and spend a little bit of money. So I went from like a $5 soldering iron to a $100 soldering iron. I got this Hako. It's a Japanese soldering iron. It's the FX888D, and this thing is awesome. So just a little disclaimer, I am using a little bit nicer soldering iron. Okay, so I'm going to take my soldering iron, and I'm just going to heat up this one little peg here, and that just pops right off. And then the inside, it's just bent over, so I'm just going to bend that, pull that out, and now that LED has been removed. Now for my wires, I do need to get a couple little leads, so if you have some little model snips, you can do something like that where you can just kind of put a little tiny bit of pressure, pull, and you can peel it off. If you don't have model snips, you can take an X-Acto blade and just kind of lightly strip towards the top, and being careful not to cut all the way through. These are going to be the 2 wires that I'm going to use to put my piece together. Now, before I start soldering, I do want to remember to take out the battery because that solder does get pretty hot, so I don't want to ruin my battery. And then I am cheating a little bit. I do also have a helping hand, and I got this on Amazon for like 20 or 30 bucks, and it is awesome. So I highly recommend that. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the wire and the base before I get going. And this is called tinning. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting a little bit of solder on my wire, a little bit of solder on the base. And once you have that done, when you go to solder the wire to your part, it just flows beautifully and everything works out pretty nice. So there you go. That looks awesome. I'm going to do a little bit of tinning on this. Soldered onto that first peg, just remembering where all the different pieces went. And now that I've got those pieces on, I'm going to put my battery back in and do a quick little test run. I did want to show you that when you're working with LEDs, the long stem is your positive and the short stem is your negative. So as long as you remember the long stem is your positive, short stem is negative, you'll be good to go. So that's a helpful tip. All right, now I'm going to do a test run. I got the switch turned on. And I'm just going to hold the wires on. So I've got the positive on the long stem, the negative on the short stem, and it works. Woohoo! Okay, so that's awesome. That works great. But what if I want the switch to actually be separated from this plastic housing so I can fit it into my piece a little bit better? So it looks like the middle peg is soldered to this metal piece that goes into where the battery touches. So what I need to do is unsolder this middle peg where the battery touches, and then I should be able to pull that switch out of the housing. So here I'm just taking my soldering iron, I'm heating this up, and I'm using the X-Acto blade just to help me bend that middle peg up and get it out of the way. All right, now that that's free, all I have to do is get the switch out. So there's a couple little pegs holding that, so I'll just bend those back. I'm going to bend the little peg at the top back, and then the switch should just come right out. And once that was free, now I have this switch, and I can use it with a little bit more freedom in my build. All right, so I'm going to take this white wire, and I'm going to solder it from there to the middle peg of my switch, and that should connect my circuitry in order to make this switch work. So I was going to edit this out, but I wanted to leave this in so I could show you that there was a pretty good clump of solder on that base. So I thought, oh, I'll just heat it up and I'll just drop that in. I didn't do any tinning on that wire. And as you can see, I messed around with it a couple times and it just would not accept it. So what I need to do is go back and do it the correct way. and go ahead and prep this first and do some tinning on this little lead wire. And you can see once I did that, apply some heat, it just accepted it really nice. So haste makes waste. I'm going ahead and doing a little bit of tinning on this, get that good to go. And then we'll solder it to the middle switch there, or the middle peg on my switch, and let that harden. It hardens like within 2 or 3 seconds. I got the battery back in, and let's test the whole circuitry. So I'm doing the short end on the negative, long end on the positive. I have the switch turned off right now, so nothing's happening. I'm going to turn the switch on. I'm going to do the short leg of the LED on the negative, the long leg on the positive, and hopefully it lights up, and boom, it worked. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so now I just need to finish this up. I'm going to solder my negative onto the short leg, my positive onto the long leg. You can see there I'm doing my tinning, and everything seems to be working, so that's great. Now here is the little hole that I cut for my switch. And once I'm ready to glue everything in, I will do that after I paint it, but you can see the switch will slide right in through there. The LED has its nice little pressure fit, so I can slide that right in. And the battery actually is going to lay really nice just in the base there, and close that up. And I can open it up if I need to change the batteries. And we'll flip this little switch on there, and yeah, that looks great. Now again, the benefit of this is, with the T-light, you get the switch, you get the battery, you get the LED if you don't have your own LEDs. So this is really nice. And I'm not going to glue anything in until I spray, because I don't want to get paint on my LED and stuff. But you can see here is an example of a finished build where the wire runs down to my switch, down at the back side. I flick that on, and his eye lights right up. And one thing that I did on this build, and I'll leave a link for this build at the very end of this video, but you can open the head there if I need to access the LED ever. And then I also built the body where if I needed to switch out the battery, because batteries do die, you can just pull this out, and there it is. That's pretty awesome. So that's how I use T-lights to incorporate LEDs into my builds, and it's pretty stinking easy.
Okay, I hope that was super helpful. I am not going to claim that I came up with that, but I really haven't seen any videos on that before. And I kind of just did it out of desperation, because I'm like, I just need a switch. And so I kind of thought through it, and that's kind of what I came up with. So again, I hope it's helpful to you. There's really no turnaround shots for this video. It's just a nice instructional. So hey, as always, it's a great day to be a toy nerd. Go make something awesome. Have a good one.